And welcome back to SWBA Today. And in today's episode, we're going to be looking at the play-in games that took place. And we're also going to be talking about Dame Lillard and his return back to the Milwaukee Bucks and really what that means for that team. And so let's go ahead and jump into it and looking at the play-in situation. And so we'll be looking at all the games that took place. And so I want to start with the first game, and that was the Orlando Magic versus the Atlanta Hawks. And so the Magic win 120-95 in that game, and that essentially sends the Orlando Magic up to play the Boston Celtics there, the second seed in the playoffs, as they secured the seventh seed, and Atlanta will have to play the Miami Heat for that eighth seed. And so, in this game between the Orlando Magic and the Atlanta Hawks, I think that the Magic did a terrific job with bringing their level of physicality to this game. I thought that this was a game in which the Magic just came out just from the start and just really kind of dictated the way that the game was going to be played. And I think that they took away everybody else except for Trae Young. I think that Trae Young, when you look at the stats, he had a pretty good game. It wasn't the most efficient game. He played 40 minutes. If you did get a chance to look at that, he did get ejected out of that one. He was only 8 of 21 from the field, but he was 1 of 5 from deep. I thought that the Magic did a terrific job with the contest on him. He did get to the free throw line 11 of 12 times, or he hit 11 of the 12 that he went to the free throw line, and he was negative 22 in this one. But, man, just a lot of other just empty calories across the board for this team. Dyson Daniels only had 7. You only had Zachary Rizachet, who had 7. Some of the players that I thought that they would have to depend on, like Karis LeVert, he only had 7. Terrence Mann only had 2. And I think that for Atlanta to win, it's going to be the others that would have to carry them. And for the Orlando Magic, I think that it all came down to Cole Anthony and then also to Anthony Black. And so if you've been following the show, I've been talking about Anthony Black. I've been talking about just what the impact of his play has been on the Orlando Magic. And we've been talking about him a lot because he's had to play a lot down the stretch. This team has kind of rested some players, and he's really been the beneficiary of the playing time. This is why playing time absolutely matters in the SWBA. He came into this game with a huge rhythm, with a ton of confidence, and he had 16 points in that game, 4 rebounds. He had 4 assists. He was 6 of 7 from the field, 3 of 3 from deep, hit some big shots in 28 minutes. And then with Cole Anthony, he has always been a good scorer. Out of North Carolina, that's exactly what he did. His dad, Greg Anthony, played in the SWBA, but Cole Anthony has the ability to get hot like this, and man, he was on fire. He had 26 points. He had 6 assists. He had a plus 32 in the plus-minus box score. He was 10 of 17 from the field and 4 of 9 from deep. And so Cole Anthony, Anthony Black, they did a terrific job off the bench. And then just from the interior of the Orlando Magic, I was very impressed with Wendell Carter Jr. I thought that he was just showing that he had the ability to step out, guard the perimeter. I've always liked his game coming out of Duke with just how mobile he is as a big. And so he had 19 points in this one. He also had 7 rebounds and 2 assists. You had Franz Wagner, only 13 points, and then also Ben Carroll. He only had 17, but still, this is a tough Orlando Magic team that really defensively, they get after you. It's one of the things where they try to maximize their possessions. They don't try to run, up and down the court. I think that that's something that would take this team to the next level, but they get it done. They're going to play the Boston Celtics. And so next up, I'd say the game of the night in the first night of the play-in here was the Memphis Grizzlies versus the Golden State Warriors. And so this was a terrific game. This was everything that you asked for. It didn't even seem like a play-in situation. It almost felt like it was probably a game, 5 in the playoffs already between these two teams. And so, look, I got to give the Memphis Grizzlies a ton of credit, even though they go down in this game 121-116. They are now going to have to play the Dallas Mavericks for the 8th seed in the West. You have the Golden State Warriors. They're going to be the 7th seed. They're going to play the Houston Rockets. We'll be talking about that a little bit more as the playoffs start. And so, giving the Grizzlies a lot of credit, just with the whole coaching standpoint, everything that's going on that way. And then also, too, the stuff that has been going on with the not the suspensions, but the fines, with Morant and all this stuff like that, and overcoming injuries. This team really put its best foot forward, and they had a chance. They really had a chance down the stretch of this game. Ja Morant, you got to give him a ton of credit, went down with a turned ankle. I don't know how he came back from that. It just looked terrible. And for him to come back and play as well as he did, you got to give him a ton of credit there. But for the Golden State Warriors, look, they play like a team that I'm not even sure how they got into this playing situation. You clearly see what it's going to take. Just if you're in the SWBA, you have to put together a complete season to avoid these type of play-in situations. And so who knows where they would have been had they had Jimmy Butler from the start of the season. But they didn't get a chance to qualify for the outright playoffs. They get beat by the Clippers there at the end, forced them into this play-in situation. They were able to take care of business. And I think it started really with the stars for the Golden State Warriors. I think that when you look at Jimmy Butler and what he was able to do, you're saying, like, this is exactly why we go out and get Jimmy Butler, because he was huge in this particular game. Let's see, he had 38 points. He had 6 assists. He had 7 rebounds in this game, 12 of 20 from the field. He had a bunch of and ones out there. He got to the free throw line 18 times. Steph Curry, he was Steph Curry. He had 37 points. He had 8 rebounds, 4 assists. But more importantly, he had some big shots from deep late in this game. He was 6 of 13 there. And he was 13 of 13 from the free throw line. And so got to give him a ton of credit. And so I think for the Golden State Warriors, it's going to be about the others as we move forward in the SWBA playoffs. But this is exactly why you go out and you get a guy like Jimmy Butler to do this for your team, all right, to take you to the next level. And so I'm curious to see what's going to happen to them. And with the Memphis Grizzlies, still have a good chance with Desmond Bane playing the way that he did in this play-in situation. I was very impressed with him. I thought that he hit some big shots. And I think with Desmond Bane, what I've liked about him is just his evolution offensively. He's not just the guy that's going to sit out and hit three-point shots. And in this game, he was 5 of 8. He hit some really big shots in this game to keep the Grizzlies close. But I like the fact that he was getting to the rim. He was hitting bank shots. He was really giving the Golden State Warriors a bunch of fits. And so he had 30 points, 6 rebounds, and 4 assists. Ja Morant, 22, 3 assists in this game. And then Jaren Jackson Jr., 18 points, 6 rebounds, and 4 assists. And I think that the X factor for the Memphis Grizzlies, if they're going to move on against the Dallas Mavericks, is going to be a guy like Zach Edey. I think that, look, he got into some tough situations defensively against the Golden State Warriors. Maybe it's going to be a better matchup against the Dallas Mavericks. We'll talk about that on the next show. But he had 14 and 17, as a rookie, not bad in a play-in situation. And then we'll see what happens with the Memphis Grizzlies and some of their other role players like a Scottie Pippen Jr. I think that he would also be an X factor for the Memphis Grizzlies if they're going to get past the Dallas Mavericks. And so with that being said, let's move on to the next game. And that was going to be, you had the Dallas Mavericks versus the Sacramento Kings in this one. And so the Dallas Mavericks take care of business. And I think that this was all about just really redemption, I think, for Klay Thompson. The last time that he was a Golden State Warrior, it just didn't work out very well. In this game, he had a solid game as the Dallas Mavericks win 120-106. And I must say, I thought it was a bit disappointing for the Sacramento Kings. I thought we were going to see a better showing than we did. With Zach LaVine, 20 points. You had DeMar DeRozan, who had 33. We knew that both of those guys were going to step up. Sabonis had a double-double with 11 and 13. But this Kings team, look, they have a lot of questions going into the offseason. They really need to get a better supporting cast. And I think that this is a team that really hasn't recovered since they've made the coaching change. And then also, too, since the big trade with De'Aaron Fox. And so they got a lot of questions here in this offseason. And then with the Dallas Mavericks, look, you knew that they had probably the best player on the floor in Anthony Davis. You were wondering, okay, which Anthony Davis were we going to get? and it was a solid one. He had 27 points. He had 9 rebounds in this game. He was plus 10. He was 9 of 23 from the field and 3 of 6, and 6 of 6 from the free throw line. So he was super aggressive. He was engaged into this game. And then with Klay Thompson, he was knocking down 3-point shots. He was 5 of 7 in this one. He had 23 points, and he also had 5 rebounds and 2 assists, looking like the Klay that we know. And then they had some good contributions off the bench. They had Brandon Williams. He went for 17. You had PJ Washington. He stepped up, which he's been stepping up for this Dallas Mavericks team. He had 17 and 9. And so that is what it's going to take, I think, for the Dallas Mavericks to really advance. It's going to be a collective effort because they just don't have the star power that they once had with Luka, with Kyrie out there. But this is a team that does play with some heart. And so we're going to see what happens as they get ready for this winner go home situation here on Friday night. So next, we want to go ahead and talk about the Chicago Bulls versus the Miami Heat. And so, look, this was a tough game for the Chicago Bulls. I think that they came into this game with a lot of momentum. They had the season series against the Miami Heat, but you could tell right from the tip, the Miami Heat were ready. They just essentially just activated into playoff mode. And I think you have to give the Miami Heat a ton of credit because this team has really put it together after the Jimmy Butler trade. I think not a lot of people were talking about how well defensively this team is, and that's something that they hang their hat on. Really, the issue with the Miami Heat is they just haven't been able to score like they've wanted to. And so defensively, they put the clamps on the Chicago Bulls. They really took away their fast-paced style, and the Chicago Bulls really couldn't counter that. Tyler Hero had a huge game in this one. He had 38 points, and I just think that there were too many free runs to the lane for the Miami Heat. I think that they just lived in the paint in this game. Andrew Wiggins looked very comfortable out there, 20 points. And then you have also, too, Khalil Ware. I think he's a very underrated rookie, played pretty strong in this game, even though it was single digits for him. Still a lot of other things across the board that he did. Bam played very well, 15 and then 12 rebounds. But I think defensively, he was super solid. And Davion Off-Night Mitchell was spectacular off the bench defensively for what he did for the Miami Heat. He had 15 points. He also had 9 assists in this game. Very talented player out of Baylor, really getting his chance now. This is his 3rd team because he's with the Kings. He was also with the Toronto Raptors there, now getting a chance with the Miami Heat. And for the Chicago Bulls, look, it's a young roster. They got back to the exact same record that they had a year ago with an older roster. And so I think it's trending in the right direction. Josh Giddey had a solid day with 25 and 10 boards and 4 assists. And then with Kobe White, a tough night. He still had 17 points out there, but Modest Buzelis, their young rookie, showed some flashes. And so they have some more questions to really answer in the offseason, do the Chicago Bulls. But I think it's trending in the right direction. That's the story for another day, but you have to give the Miami Heat a ton of credit, and I think I like them a lot going against the Atlanta Hawks here coming up in a winner-go-home situation. And so lastly, want to talk about the return of Dame Lillard. And so I think that this is big. This is huge. And so this is great news, first of all, I think, to the entire SWBA. And this is great news to Dame Lillard. I'm glad that he's able to come back from this. And this is super good news to hear. And so I just hope that with Milwaukee now, they can get Dame back at some point. He's still out for game 1. But from what I'm reading, he's going to try to start to ramp up. I saw that he had been doing some 3-on-3, and then also, too, he's been doing some practice activities. So that is a great sign for Dame. I think that they were saying they were expecting him to miss the rest of the season. Remember, Wemby did miss the rest of the season with what Dame kind of was going through here. So this is just huge that he was able to come back. And so I think he's going to be really big for the Bucks in this upcoming series. I think that when you look at Milwaukee and just what they've gone through since they've gotten Dame, I'm not sure that they've really necessarily had a chance to get on the same page. And I think this is good to see Dame come back. I know he still has to ramp up a little bit, but I would expect to hopefully see him back at some point during this Pacers series. I think that series is going to be one of the more interesting series because the Pacers are really starting to hit their stride. I think that Giannis has been playing at an exceptional level. And then just with the role players of the Bucks, that's probably the biggest question mark for me. The Pacers seem the more just put together and complete team right now at this point. But with Dame, I think that could maybe change things and really shift it over to the Bucks. But we'll see, just how good Dame is back, because he did miss quite a bit of time. And so we'll be talking a little bit more about these playoff series, just the games to be really anticipated the most in the Eastern and the Western Conference. But we'll be talking tomorrow about the play-ins that are coming up here on Friday night. Again, you got the Atlanta Hawks versus the Miami Heat, and then you have the Dallas Mavericks versus the Memphis Grizzlies. And so we'll be talking about that one. And so, as we always say, see the game, be the game. I'll see you guys on the next one. All right, peace.